Those are the techniques that I use in my cooking. Those techniques I feel are essential for the seasoned cook as well as the novice. These techniques are meant to stimulate you, to excite you, so that you get involved into the basics. I use those techniques certainly in my book, but they are more than that. They are meant to be used in any cookbook that you have at home. I hope you're going to enjoy them, and happy cooking. Everything is important in the kitchen, especially even tying your apron and tying your towel. Usually you will fold it like that a couple of times, no more, to get a thicker front so that you don't burn yourself here. You tie this around with a double knot and usually hide it underneath this way. And then your towel, take it by the corner, shake it like that, and you attach it to this one time and you come back another time so that it is attached. You know, it holds, but if you have to take it out, it comes out easily. So here is the way of doing it. One and twice. This is it. Knives are very important for the chef. They're extension of your finger. Basically, you need 3 knives. A chopping knife, 8 to 12 inch, depending on your hand, utility knife, and a paring knife. Yes. Probably have 200 knives in my house. In any case, the knife is made of teeth here, and when you bang the knife around, those teeth get out of whack. Anything which cut from a scalpel to a saw is made of teeth. So you have to realign the teeth, and you realign it by running it on a steel like this. On the steel, you have to be careful first to apply pressure. You have to cover the blade completely, that is starting at the heel, finishing at the top, rather than just the center. And not to move your wrist, otherwise you take out. That will realign the teeth, but at some point there is no more teeth. You have to have a stone, and it's usually a wet stone, and you have to apply pressure on it, about 25 to 30 degree angle on each time, and you have to spend time with it. This is a fairly coarse stone, and sometimes you have very finishing stones which are very fine like this one. Or you can even use an electric machine like this one. You use that stone here because you see there is a segment of the stone and the knife, which if you don't remove them with water or oil, will get back into the stone. The stone will get like a piece of marble and it won't be abrasive anymore. If the knife is sharp enough, it should be able to cook. This is a very overripe tomato. That knife should be able to cut into it. Now the proper usage of a knife is to grab the knife and glue it to your finger. Now your finger are never this way, always this way, and that thumb here, if it's in front, the tip will go, so it's in the back. People use it more on the side, more in front, doesn't really matter where it's there. I can look at you and chop because that knife is glued to my finger. That hand is just a dummy going up and down. That hand orders everything. I push the knife. Wherever I push the knife, it's going to go. I don't really have to look at it. It's not difficult, but you have to learn how to do it. Down and forward, usually. Practice with a cucumber. It's a nice way of practicing. You empty a cucumber with a spoon. You go on one side. You go back on the other side. Rather than try to go totally in the center, it will break the cucumber. You go down and forward. Down and forward. It's already the process of cutting. Down and forward, and eventually or backward or forward. But there is that motion of cutting. If I slide the knife against my finger, if I don't move that finger, nothing happens. That finger starts moving like les petits rats de l'opéra, you know, the little dancer. And if I move very slowly, I'm going to have very, very thin slice here. I'm going to have extremely thin slice, because I move very, very slowly. If I move a little faster and very faster, the point is that I will end up from a slice like this to like this to like this. Doesn't matter. You hear the same sound. It's a question of moving your finger back and forth. When you use something like parsley, you want to gather it into a bunch and slice it again The same thing we did before. Then gather it together again. Now, often people will put the palm of their hand on the table and cut it this way, which is fine for certain things. Parsley as fiber. The proper way is to have the front of the knife first, because when the down go, you will automatically have that motion of cutting. So this is the proper way of chopping parsley, with that motion. That's it. When you cut an onion, again, you cut in half, and you go with the onion, you go far away, and again cut. This is that motion. And then you want to cut across this way. And finally, again, the same technique to get the smallest possible chopped onion this way. If the knife is sharp, you won't cry, because you won't release too much of the sulfuric acid which makes you cry. Likewise, when you cut bread, for example, often people will put their knife and apply pressure on this. And here is what happens. You crush the bread together. What you have to do is to go down and forward, really using the blade from here to there, that motion, rather than crushing it. That's the basic principle of the knife. The technique to sauté is simple, but a bit different with different pan. You can see a skillet like that, it has a sway. So the movement that you do is elliptical. It comes back on itself. I cannot do that with a straight edge. If I do this, it will bang against and back up to you. So on a straight edge like this, you have to grab it and you have to really actually jump it. Not really in that movement, but up, jumping. And that's all there is to it. Freshly ground pepper is essential. And I use black peppercorn, that's the one I like the best. When the pepper comes out like that, you can really smell and taste the essential oil. If you have pepper ground for weeks, it doesn't have any taste. It burns your mouth, doesn't have much taste. Sometimes in recipe you say use mignonette. And mignonette is crushed pepper like that, usually black pepper. You can use a crusher like this, but even easier, you use a skillet and you make it roll on top of it. You can see, bring it back together. And this is what you use for a steak au poivre. See, the steak au poivre, you dip your steak in it on one side and on the other side, and you sauté it. This is mignonette. There is many different corkscrew openers on the market here. I have three as the most common. The rabbit here, this is for old wine, and then the classic one used by most sommeliers. When you open a bottle of wine, often the sommelier tells you to cut it here or underneath. Some insist underneath. I mean, what's important is that the wine itself, when it's poured, does not touch the metal. The metal or plastic now, most of the time. So on this one here, you would want to make sure that you go in the center of the cork, hold it a little bit, and start pouring, opening it with the first layer here. This way. And then lift it up, go to the second level, and lift it up again. So it's an easy way of opening it. If you have an old bottle of wine, what I like to do is just to cut the top this way. And then, using that two-pronged things, well, it's an old bottle of wine because often the cork will have a tendency to crumble. So you use this. One is longer than the other. So you put one first, then the other one, and you kind of jigsaw or move it this way back and forth to get it. And here, I probably have to put it between my leg to twist it like that and bring it back up. You have made no hole in the cork at that point, and if it's old and crumbly, that's how you save it. If I want to show that cork, the way that I cut it on top, I will cut that fourth level here, lift that up, put my cork in it, fold it, and I'll present my cork like that. If you want to open champagne, you first have to chill it. And a common mistake is done, people put ice in there but cannot push it back in. You have to put water. Also that you have water, very easy to go in, and that would cool up very fast. If you really want to go even faster, you put salt in it. And the salt make it much colder and it will chill very fast. Now when you're ready to open it, clean up your bottle of champagne from the bottom. Now you always have to watch out for the pressure in there. Find the little round thing of metal. Take this out. There is usually a little red, oh, here it is, yes. And then you unscrew this, putting your thumb on top of it, just to make sure. And then press it, move the cage out. Okay, now the secret to open the bottle of champagne, grab the bottom part of it, your cork, don't tug the cork, turn the bottom part of it, and theoretically it shouldn't make much of a noise, just a little bit of noise this way. When you pour champagne, you always pour twice. The first time the foam comes up, so if you have several glasses, you serve them, and you pour a second time after. À votre santé. I like to present my butter nicely at the table when I have a party. And often I put it into a little container like that, very tight, and I cover it with plastic wrap so it does not pick up taste in the refrigerator, because butter will pick up taste in the refrigerator. To make it a bit nicer, you can use a fork, let's say, and just do a little design like this. Then, you know, going to my garden, I have a couple of leaves of one eatable flowers or another, and I put it there, and this is it. It's a nice presentation of butter. Another way is using a paring knife, and if your butter is the right temperature, to scrape it on top of the butter like this, and then you roll it around so that it comes to join on the other side at the beginning of the flowers. Well, I can put it here. And then you redo it again. And the second one, you do it in a tighter scroll like this to do the center of the flowers. And then I will take this to put it directly in there. There, you see. Now you can use it right away, of course, put it on top of this. But often I will put it directly into ice cold water so it doesn't pick up any taste in the refrigerator. It becomes very hard, and then I can grab it. Like this one is hard now. And I could roll the edge in paprika, you know, to give it a bit of color, like, you know, when you're serving something with a bowl of butter. So you will have a little bit of two. And that's basically it, you know, you put it right on top and serve it. There is many ways, especially in baking, that you have to know how to cut paper in one way or the other to fit your mold, and I'm going to show you a few. Like starting with a cookie sheet like that. So when I have to do this, I butter usually half of the paper. Use your hand, it's the best way. Half of the paper. What you do after, you fold the other half. It's buttered on each side. If you want to do a cookie sheet like that, what you do in addition, you fold it in four. And from that part here, which has no opening, you make an incision here. You know, like this. You cut that here. Now what I do, you open it. I will put it butter side down first, just to butter the bottom, then lift it up and put it back on the other side. Now it will glue to both sides. Look at what I did on the side here. I will have those two things which are going to cross over to fit in the corner. So this is totally molding when you do a roulade or something like this and you want it to be totally, that's how you do it. Now when you do something wrong like that, this is a flan ring with removable button, you have to have a piece of paper which is at least as large as this. Again, it can be buttered or not, depending what you do, but you fold it in half, in quarter, and after, from that part where you have no opening here, you grab it and you do a triangle, another triangle here, smaller and smaller, and another triangle here. Now I will measure this from the center here to here. I'll probably cut it here because I need a little bit of the edge. So I will cut it right around here. To make sure that this will fit good on the side, I will fringe the sides a little bit with the scissor. Now I can open it. And it's going to fit here in the corner. When you have to put rice or beans in it sometimes, you cook something this way. Now if you do something like this, like a cookbook or another cake with the thing in the center, you do the same thing. Again, folding it in smaller and smaller triangle. Now I measure this from the center here to here, which is this, and remeasure it again so that from here on the center. And then if I have something to cool off, this will fit exactly into my mold here, which is the idea. Maybe the one which is used the most is the cornucopia. And what you have to do is to cut a triangle like this, a right-hand triangle. If you remember a little bit your geometry, you have to fold it in the center of the hypotenuse, bring the other side back on, and now with my thumb I go down, and with my finger up, I'm pulling it up to make it until I have a real point here. And then I fold that inside. You have to fold this carefully so that it doesn't undo. We use hundreds of different ways of using that in pastry. One way, often you put it in a glass, it's easier to do, is the use of chocolate. A little bit of melted chocolate in there. When you take it like this, where you have the fold, you want to fold it on top of the seam here on one side, the other side, and back inside until it came to a very fine point here. And then of course you use that to write happy birthday or, I mean, different type of decoration that you do, of course, with chocolate. See the way you cut the paper. A special technique to do garlic, you have head of garlic like this. Actually try to get the big leaves around like this. And then you put it on the side with the palm of your hand. The garlic will separate, especially if the garlic is a bit dry like this one. Now you should always take the stem of the garlic, and you might as well doing it before you peel it, because if you do it before you peel it, when you crush it a little bit this way, that will release the skin easily. If you don't remove it before, you have to remove it after, and it stays attached to this. You can use garlic with a vegetable peeler like this to do garlic flake, which are very nice, to sauté with pasta or whatever, very thin like this. But conventionally, the garlic is crushed. When you crush it, you bring it closer to here because you have to clear up your finger with that knife. You go down on top of it and forward. To release the essential oil, there is 2 essential oil in garlic, which give you that sticky mixture that you have in it. Now I can keep the palm of my hand on the table and just rock it, and the reason is that this is crushed. So I'll go around and I clean my knife. Clean your knife a couple of times to really have a puree of garlic. Classic way. Now when you do a carrot, one of the mistakes, people don't cut the end of it. First, you should cut both hands. Use a vegetable peeler. Now the idea is not to go this way and then this way and do the end. You do it in one time. The thin part here, and your finger cannot be higher than the carrot. It has to clear the vegetable peeler. So not this way, this one, it has to rotate on your hand into one streak. Because now the end is flat, and that's it. Proper way of peeling a carrot. I love leek. There is nothing like leek and potato soup. When you buy a leek, and sometimes they can be expensive, all you discard is that part. Then look at the outside like this. Maybe the first one is kind of tough, as you see it's dirty. So I would remove that. Actually, I wash that and keep it for stock. The second leaf is tender about here. The third one, tender about here. The fourth one here. Maybe the fifth one, and so forth. I mean, the idea is to go into the leek when it becomes lighter in color, not really to remove all of this. This is expensive. Then you want to wash it. You open it in usually 4, going or 6, like this, to expose the center. It's really in the center that you will see that you have the dirt. That's it. So then you want to wash it. Wash it under cold water. You know, in the sink, it's very good. But certainly you have to wash it. And even when you wash it after you slice it, don't pour that into a colander, because if I were to put my hand in the bottom of this, there's a fair amount of dirt there. So you use the leek in different way. You can look at this way. Again, the same slicing technique that we've done. That would be for soup. That would be for stew. And as you can see, it would be the light green as well as dark green. Often with the white of the leek here, we do what we call a julienne. What you do, you cut the leek in half. This has been organized by Mother Nature, as you can see, except the root. So that is all separated, so you don't disturb it. You fold it in half. And then from the side here, you slice it into what we call a julienne. That is a long strip, those long strips, which we use a great deal in modern cooking, in a julienne of leek. When you buy asparagus, look at them. I have 2 types of asparagus here. This one has a tight head, like the bud of a flower. That's what you want. Firm, very firm, thick, fat, and firm. This one is already, you see the flowers, the petal of the flowers are opening. It's more flexible. It's a much older specimen. So I would go for this. The asparagus is going to be good from here to there, and once it's changed color, this is going to be tough. So I peel that lower part of the asparagus, otherwise I have to get rid of it, which is a shame. So use a vegetable peeler, put it flat on the table, not with your hand underneath because you're too high. Don't lift up the asparagus because it will crack. Make it roll and start here. Go right against your finger. You don't have to worry. You're not going to cut yourself here. You go all around. It's like, you know, a flower that you've done, and at the end now you can break it. Now that part is just as standard as that part. Now the asparagus can be cooked whole, which is often that I do, and sometimes we cut them on a bias to saute them this way in a skillet. Asparagus just saute with a little bit of butter, delicious. When I was a kid, we really have to string the beans on each side of the beans. Now beans do not have string anymore. Yet, when you do peas, for example, and you have to open on the side where there is a ridge, that's where you have to put your thumb and open them this way. There is different size in the pod usually, and then you run them this way. Sometimes the snow peas or snap peas have string. So you start not on the side of the flowers here, but on the other side and go down. You see, and then you twist around, break it on the other side and go down on the other side. When you get to fava beans, you take them out like the peas again. They are bigger, more cottony, and most recipe will tell you to remove the shell from the outside. So what you do is to drop this in boiling water for a minute or so, and after that you take just a little bit of the skin here, and then you press, and it will come out the pot. That's the easiest way of doing it. I often use the kernel of corn in my recipe. We either saute or in the food processor, sometimes even in the blender to make a real puree and cook it to make like fresh polenta. And when you cut the corn, you know, I cut it in that direction, you can cut it in that direction, but often people will take their knife and apply pressure here. And as you can see, it is not easy. Why? Because I'm using about 1 inch from the center of the knife here. And that's the wrong position of the knife. From that position, I turn here, I start here, and I finish there, and all of a sudden, it slides very easily. As you can see, because I am using the knife the right way. These are small details who make a difference. You can scrape this. This is the proper way of using your knife. Too often when I go into the kitchen, I see the stem of the broccoli in the garbage can. Of course, the head of the broccoli or the flower should be separated into little flowerets like this, but this, in my opinion, is the best part of the broccoli, providing that you peel it. And there is a thick, heavy peel, you know, that you go on the outside. Here it is. And you can do it in a different way, in a julienne or sauté it, but certainly that part here is the best part of the broccoli. It comes like this, same thing on the cauliflower. And you can see it here, this is tender, much more tender than that. So never throw out the stem of your broccoli. When you do spinach, you know, when you have the baby spinach, like the one in the center here, then you keep the whole leaves, of course. When it comes to the outside, and those are not too large, but sometimes they are even much larger than that, what you have to do is to fold the leaves of the spinach and pull it out here. And this is the way, and don't throw that out too, you can make a soup with it. When you cook all artichoke, you want to cut the end of the leaf, like I'm doing here, because there is prickle on it. And you want to buy beautiful artichoke. You cook that in boiling water, wet enough so that they are tender, and then you remove the center and the choke. However, when you go to the market, when I go to the market, and if I see some artichokes, and these ones are still pretty nice, but they're already pretty yellow and dark, that's when you buy them for artichoke bottom. They are less expensive. So first, don't throw out the stem. Again, the stem, you want to peel it, just like you do for the broccoli. You want to put a little bit of lemon juice because that discolor. And then you cook it. This is very tender when it's cooked. Now, if you don't know how to do an artichoke, it's a bit tricky. So you have to do what I'm doing here. at least a few times to get into the mood. And what I'm doing here, I'm doing actually the same way you would do if I was eating an artichoke. I'm breaking the artichoke and pulling down. And you can see that here and here, where the meat should be, it stays right there because I break and pull, break and pull, break and pull. If I pull it this way and I remove the piece of meat, here it is, which I shouldn't. So I do that to be all around, at least all of the bottom of the artichoke is clear, so I know I'm not going to cut into it with my knife. Then I cut the top, as you do normally. You can use a small knife, you can actually use a good vegetable peeler and just clean it on the outside. And that, for people who've never done an artichoke's bottom, probably the safest way of doing it. Because often we have a tendency to cut into it. You do an edge here, and that's it. You want to put some lemon on it, because you cook it with a little bit of lemon. This becomes a receptacle, and you fill it up with spinach or poached eggs or anything you want. So here it is, it has to be. Now, if you're a bit more proficient with the knife, as professional, conventionally the way we do it, we cut it here, and I cut around with the knife this way. You can see here, it's like a cone that I have done here. And I can remove the front. I can cut it up to here. Actually, those leaves are pretty tender. I can remove the center here, but that I can cook as well. And now, I'm left with that piece, and this is what we call turning an artichoke. Notice that my knife is straight up. I go one layer straight up because there is an angle here. When I get to the end of this, my knife goes this way, and I do another turn around. I don't stop in between, of course. When I get to the end here, I go flatter, and I continue again. So this is the process of turning, keep turning, turning, tourner an artichoke, turning an artichoke. This is the process here. Even if there is a little bit of grain left over, it's fine. And these artichokes are placed into water, lemon juice, a dash of olive oil if you want, and you cook them. As you can see here, I have those leaves from the inside. This one, I left the stem out of it, which you can do this way. But you see that the center, the choke, should slide out very easily. And now it can be stuffed with something or cut into quarter like this, which look good. You can keep them basically a week in your refrigerator, fill them up when you need it with a poached eggs or whatever. Technique of artichoke bottom. In many recipes that I use pepper, I like to peel the pepper. Sometimes I put it on top of the stove or under the broiler and I char it all around, and you put it in a bag, let it steam 5-6 minutes, then the skin peeled off. It's one way of doing it, but often if I have one, I may do a vegetable peeler with that. And then along the way, obviously, as you can see, there is split here, and I don't have access with my vegetable peeler to those split here. So you go all around wherever you can get it, and in the bottom. And now I cut right into those split here. You see? Here, there, here, and there. So that by the time I take it out, I take the inside out. Now I have access to the edge. So now I peel the edge where I had a little bit of skin left. Here. You can cut it in different way. Put it flat. In little dice, we call a brunoise, that you want to saute. Or then you want to do it into little strip. one way or the other, this is an easy and a good way of peeling pepper. Now, when using tomato, very often the recipe asks you to peel the tomato, seed the tomato. You can peel it in many different ways. This one, you impale on a fork or on a knife like that, right above the gas stove, and it will burn and char the skin, which, as you can see, after that slide out very easily. And it also imparts a little bit of taste to the tomato. The most common way is probably to put it in boiling water, like I have here. How long do you leave it? Depending if the tomato is really ripe, like 10 seconds. If it's not too ripe, a bit longer. Often people choke it in cold water after. I don't really do it. I think it kind of tends to taste some taste out of it. Now you can do it with a knife as well, especially if you intend to keep the skin for one reason or another. For example, here with the knife, I will my knife in a jigsaw fashion. I go this way, I make a base, and I will turn around, and you can see my knife is moving up and down. I'm sewing like in a jigsaw fashion. I'm doing one streak. Here I'm going one peel, and I stop the peel here, and I'm doing a second peel to add to it. If I do this, it's because I want to use this other flour. So the base is there. I can put that right on the base. See, it will hold nicely. And then with this one, and you can see the edge because I'm sewing it around, I do a very tight scroll out of this, and that tight scroll I will of course place in the center of my tomato here to finish the rows. Here we are. Actually, I could have used also a vegetable peeler, and you can see here those vegetable peelers work absolutely wonderful for that. This is a serrated edge vegetable peeler, and it works very well. So when you have a tomato like this, very often recipe asks you to seed it. You should cut it across. That is perpendicular to the stem across, and then you press out the seed and the juice. All of that you keep for stock. When I have a nice tomato which is ripe like that, I could take a piece of this. I take a clean towel, put that in the middle of it, and I can do my own cherry tomato, any size that I want. And then you can open it, of course. You have a nice bowl of tomato here, and you can put them on a little skillet, brush it with a little bit of butter, dash of salt, warm it up to serve it as a garnish, you know, for one fish or another. The rest of the tomato is usually cut into dice like this and sauté in what we call a concassé of tomato. When I worked in Paris in the 50s, in big restaurants like the Plaza Athénée, Maxime, when we came in the morning, the potatoes were done. They were peeled and they were cut like this very often. Nothing was wasted. All the trimming were there. And this is the way it was done. You know, you cut the potato this way, 1, 2, 3. Then you basculate the potato this way, 1, 2, 3. And you have a perfect parallelepiped, so-called. And this, in turn, were cut in this way, very thin. And the thin potato were piled up and cut into what we call pomme pie, that is straw potato. And then the next one was cut into about that size stick of potato, and that was mashed stick potato, what we call French fried. And then large one were cut like that, what we call pont neuf potato, this way. All of that were fried. Likewise with the potato, cut into pieces like this, and eventually turn into football shape. Like this. This is the classic way of different size. You cut and you'll have to whip. We do that with carrot. And if I recall exactly at that time, the chef wanted 7 face. 7 face on each potato. Doesn't really matter. Another way that we cut potato was to use the mandolin here, one of those in slice or different way. I choose to do this one with the skin on. You cut this way, and you have one cut with the line, and then you twitch the other side, and if you turn each time and twist, you end up with what we call waffle potato. You know, those potatoes which are like little waffle. Those potatoes that you fry, put them in the fryer, and from this, of course, to get your waffle potato, nice and crispy. When you use an apple, you have to core it first. This is a technique which is very good, but you have to be very careful. If you don't do it properly, you will hurt yourself. I put my thumb here, and I have the point of my knife here. The point of the knife cannot go lower than my thumb. If I don't have my thumb here, I'm this way, I will go into my hand. So first I place my thumb on top of it, plant the knife around, and turn around my thumb, as you can see here. There is no danger of cutting. I can even use this, actually, as a decoration in my dessert. The same thing on the other side, again with my thumb. Now I start peeling with the knife, and as you can see, I'm holding the knife almost at the end, and I'm cutting with the point of the knife by a little streak because of the texture of the apple. Notice that my left hand, I'm right-handed, is pushing the apple into the knife almost as much as the other side. Now this you cut in half. Again, the same technique, my thumb here, and I will turn around, again to remove the core here. Now you can say, well, I do that with a melon baller. Fine, it works. This is faster. Then after we slice it, you will take the end of your apple and keep only the center slice, which are the same size. This, the trimming of the apple, is usually coarsely cut. Just imagine that this is a dough. I'm doing a tart or something. I will put that on the dough, spread it out on the dough, and then I can take my apple, like a deck of cards, spread it out this way to arrange them right on top of my apple. Again, it's a question of speed and efficiency in the kitchen, and that's important. If you want to take the seed out of pomegranate, here is the way you do it. I use a fork here to push inside the back of it and cut it into several pieces like this. And then I do it in water. Right on top, you take a very sturdy spoon. And as you can see, everything comes out. And I do it in water so that if there is a little bit of the white stuff, it comes to the top and you can remove it. Removing the skin out of pomegranate. I use a lot of orange in my dessert, and very often I do candied orange peel. And I use a vegetable peeler like that to get nice, equal, thin strip, because what you want is only the surface of the skin. That's where you have all of the essential oil. And even I candy them this way. Sometimes I fold this in half and do a julienne out of it. That's what we use for like a duck à l'orange, you know. So you would want to do this to put in the sauce, or the strip like this are very nice. What you don't want is strip cut with a knife which is that thick. because the pith underneath is kind of bitter. I mean, it's not that you cannot use it. You can use it, but you'll have to blanch it several times because it's bitter. You see, this is in the skin, as I said, that the essential oil is. You see, if I do it, I press on this here, you can see that in the skin of the orange, lemon, tangerine and all that, you have that essential oil. That's what gives you the taste in a dish. More actually than the juice of the orange, which is citric acid. Now, when you want to grate it, another way to use it is with one of those small graters. You can use this, and that really, again, take only the surface of the skin, which is what you want. When you finish this, you want to bang that on each side to remove that from this, and this is a very potent, very strong thing that you put like in a custard or something like this. Now, if you want to take the skin out of the orange, you start on one hand, and that point you're going to sew again. When I did an apple, my knife was here. When I did a tomato, my knife was here. When I do this, my knife is here because of the texture of it. So I start cutting around, and you want to cut until the orange is totally nude. That is, all the pit is removed. So you cut around, you know, in a jigsaw fashion again. See, this one has a very thick skin, you know, depending the time of the year. You usually, I mean, I try to use seedless orange, you know, large, with not too much of a skin. This one is large, but that's the way it is at the market. Sometimes works out better than other time. Okay. So my orange, as you can see, has shrunk considerably, but this is the way it should look. Now, if I want to remove the segment in between, you see the segment, I go from one side, on one edge of the segment, to the other edge, and that way it's much better when you don't have seed inside. Now the next one, you go next to the segment, you twist your knife around, and it comes next to the next membrane, and so forth. So I will cut that around. Some slice will be bigger than other, up to the end, and I keep the juice anyway, but basically what I am left with is the membrane here. That's it. And that makes me a beautiful dessert just with a little cookie or a piece of brioche. I always use a lot of lemon in my cooking, in my baking. Often you need the juice of lemon. If you know, roll it on the table like that, it softens a little bit and you get more juice. You can drop it in boiling water for 10 seconds. You can put it in the microwave oven 5-10 seconds as well, and you tend to get more juice out of it. One thing that you should know is that you don't cut your lemon in the center. You cut on the side here, you know, not in the center. I learned that in Mexico, and here you get much more juice out of it by doing it this way. Now, the decoration of lemon, there is many, many different ways of doing it. Certainly, when I was an apprentice, one way was just to cut the rind around like this. I mean, actually, we cut it twice, this way, and this way for the decoration, and just made a nut out of this. You can do that, of course, with orange. We do that with grapefruit. And the question of presentation on the plate, it's relatively important, but a nice plate. You can put a little thing of parsley in the center. A classic way of doing it, certainly, is to cut it into teeth like this, as I'm going to do here. But actually, instead of doing the regular teeth, you will see that I'm going to cut the teeth in a kind of bias, not straight down. And I will have a spiral effect. Yeah, we're going around. Then you're going to have that spiral effect, which is a little fancier than the regular one. And this is a decoration for lemon. When you use eggs, a common mistake, is to break the egg on something pointed like this. What that does, it go inside and introduce bacteria from the shell into the eggs and often break the yolk. So what I do, I always break it on something flat like this. Now this is the way I like to separate the eggs. I put them all of that, rather than going from one shell to the other, I find out that there is always at least like a quarter of the egg white which stays stuck around the yolk or in the shell. When you beat an egg white properly, you get 1 cup of egg white for a large egg. So if you miss like a quarter in each eggs, your proportions are off. So I cut them this way, then grab the yolk out. You can see here that yolk, I'll go it from one end to the other, and that will include trying to separate what I have here, which is the chalaza of the egg. It's on one side and also on the other side. Sometimes it's longer. The chalaza of the egg is actually a sinew which holds that yolk in suspension in the center of the shell. It has nothing to do with like the germ of the eggs or anything like this. You can freeze your egg white easily, and each egg white will fit in one of those ice cube container, the large one. So it's an easy way. When they are frozen, you put them in a bag. The egg yolk don't freeze well. You have to go to a lower temperature because of bacteria. I'm going to make a mayonnaise now to show you how to make a mayonnaise. Those are small eggs, so I have 3. Right? Mustard. The proportion there are not that important. Salt, pepper. What I'm saying is that if I had 2 egg yolks rather than 3, it would work. If I had a bit less or a bit more mustard, it would work just as well. And a dash of vinegar. Okay, this is the base of your mayonnaise that you work. And then to that you have to have the oil. The most important thing that you have to realize, the oil cannot be ice cold. Sometimes it's difficult to hold and pour at the same time, so my friend gave me this, which is really terrific. You push it on it and that, look at that, it holds by itself. So then I pour the oil in it. You're supposed to go very slowly when you put the oil. Tell you the truth, you don't have to go that slowly. And again, the oil, you can have a little bit of, for example, I don't know, walnut oil, which is a very strong in flavor. You would want to use that maybe with a canola oil, or then half olive oil and half peanut oil or something like this. And basically my mayonnaise is finished here. As you can see, enough with the dough, they get together and they get to be that consistency of a mayonnaise. It is true, however, if I pour that oil way too fast here in great quantity, then it will break down. Or if you have it in your refrigerator and you take it out of your refrigerator ice cold, it will break down. And this is what it will look like when it breaks down. It's all broken and separated. I can take 1 egg yolk or a bit of vinegar or some mustard, anything that I put in to start with, and start putting it back together. I can even try to do it in the same bowl. I put a little bit of that on the side here, and I will put the point of my knife just in this and make the top of it, just the top of it, to know whether it's getting smooth together. And I think it's getting smooth together. So if it's getting smooth together, I will go slightly deeper in the bowl with my whisk. Then I will get a little deeper and a little deeper. And now basically I'm at the bottom of the bowl. So I will try to do a little more round like this. And basically the mayonnaise now is back together. You want to present the mayonnaise, you see a nice way is to put it into a little bowl like this. We garnish the mayonnaise with all kind of things and it changes name, it becomes a tartare sauce, a gribiche and so forth. I like usually to, when I do that I turn the bowl, I don't turn the spatula to make it smooth on top. And then after you can move your spatula. If you want to go a bit farther, I did that tomato before, that tomato rose. It would be nice right on top of it to do a nice presentation of mayonnaise. One of the greatest things to eat is eggs. Hundreds of recipes, curdled eggs, scrambled, fried, sauté, hard-cooked eggs, and sauté. And any country in the world usually can afford eggs, and most of the protein in many countries come from eggs. When I cook a hard-cooked egg, on the round part of the egg, I make a hole here with a pin because there is an air chamber. When I put that in boiling water, the pressure is released, so my eggs never crack in the water. This is a raw egg. If I spin it like this, it doesn't spin because it's liquid inside. That egg is cooked. Because if I spin it, it will basically stand up because it's totally solid. You get it. Now, one of the best ways to peel the eggs is underwater, because what you have to do after you crack the egg, you have to go through the shell, and there is a little skin underneath. You have to go under that skin, so the water goes under that skin. When the water goes under that skin, under running water, it makes it easy to peel. That egg is hard cooked. And it's hard cooked properly because you don't see any grain around the yolk. Why? Because as the egg goes into water, the sulfur in the egg white goes toward the center of the egg. And it has a physical reaction with the iron in the egg yolk, which gives you that green tinge. So as soon as the egg is cooked, you lift it out of the water, drop it in the ice cold water. Not for like 30 seconds, long enough so the cold goes inside, the sulfur fill it and cross the egg white and dissipate in the water. So that's very important. 10 minutes. 10-minute egg is about 10 minutes depending on the size of it. Now this is enough mole. We call mole. It means soft in French. It's like a poached egg. It should have that texture here in the center, and that's cooked like 6 minutes. But instead of cooking it as a poached egg, you cook it just like a hard-cooked egg, but for 6 minutes. And those are eggs which were cooked in the circulator. Those were cooked at 149 degrees for 1 hour. And it's interesting like that because they come out of the shell when you take them out, you see? This way, and you can see this is the eggs cooked in the circulator, cooked this way. The texture is quite interesting because the white and the yolk is almost the same consistency. Nice and soft and creamy. It's somewhat between an hard-cooked egg and a poached egg. Absolutely delicious this way too. One of my favorite ways of making eggs, and my wife's too, is off cocotte. The cocotte is a small thing like that we call a cocotte, a little soufflé mold, and you poach your eggs in it. Like in there, I'm going to put a bit of cracked pepper, some salt in the bottom. I may even coat it with herbs. So you could have all kind of different type of herbs. Any herb that you will have in your garden, that you will do it here. And then we break the eggs on top of it. Right there. Beautiful eggs. Another one here. Okay, and we cook the eggs. You put them this way and cover it so that the steam comes on top, and that will take about 4 minutes, 5 minutes to cook. And you can see now, I can see the yolk, the texture that it is. So this is my off cocotte. So that's enough moulet, especially if you put, as I did here, something around. So you do that on a toast like this, turn it upside down, shake it a little bit. So here I have my off cocotte this way and off cocotte moulet. And the center again should be about a soft egg. Yeah, this is the right texture that you will have in the center of that egg, just like this. I want to show you another egg that we do often in France, which is œuf frit, fried eggs. We actually fried it into a deep frying this way. Now you have to be ready with 2 spoons, getting around, and you actually get close to it and go right into the oil. And what I do here, I bring the white. You have to bring the white around the yolk, this way. It doesn't actually absorb much oil, you know. And see, now it's brought around, so I can turn it around so that it's brown on each side. And you want to cook that for about a minute, minute and a half, depending on the temperature of your oil, so that the inside is like a soft boiled egg. At the beginning, if you don't gather it together, the white goes all over the place. So this is about cooked enough. I can remove it now. You see? Putting it on a plate, on this side or on this side, both sides are nice. And I can show you the texture of it. The texture of it will be basically, should be basically, as I say, like a poached egg. This is the œuf frit, the fried eggs. A French omelette is not better than an omelette you make in a diner here. To make, in fact, the way my mother makes her omelette, and most people in France, it's exactly the same. However, this is a classic French omelette: 3 eggs, salt, pepper, herb, a little piece of butter in there, and we want to do it in a very creamy way, with very tight curd. The curd are to be very tight. Conventionally, you would let that take and bring this occasionally to have large curd. In the French omelette, you will mix this all the time here to make it very creamy. You don't even want to let the top of the omelette brown, because that would soften the egg. And you will see that at the end here, when I'm ready to roll it, close to now, I will bring all of my mixture right at the end here. It's still very soft, as you can see here, and I'm rolling. If I leave it one layer, it's like rolling a carpet. Here, the whole thickness is here. Bringing that around, bringing one lip here. Now the lip should be a half moon there. Bring this around, bang the side of your dishes to bring the other lip back up, bringing down on top of it. This is the time now that you would want to stuff it, if you wanted to stuff it. Now you want to change hand to invert it, bang it on the side. So it really comes to the edge of the pan, put your serving platter right against it and invert it. Now that omelette should be very creamy, no pleat on top of it, golden, and very moist in the center. If I cut the center of it, you will see that the center is going to be very soft and creamy, the way it should be, with tight curd. One of the joy of winter for me is to eating oyster and clam any type of seafood like that, which is nice and cold in winter. Of course, you have to open it. There is different opener. This one, that one, the classic one, this one. I tend to prefer the pointy one. And for those small Miyagi oyster, usually you go toward the hinge here at the end. Insert it a little bit and up, crack it open and run it close to the shell. So you want to cut the abducting muscle that you have here. This is what's holding the oyster to the shell. And then you want to go underneath like that to separate it. And now that's it. It's ready to eat. Fresh, very juicy. When you open clam of different size, and those are cherry stone type. Again, the classic way is probably to open it at the hinge here. And it's a bit difficult. You really have to apply a lot of pressure here to crack it open. That's it. You want to open it this way and cut also the other abducting muscle. That's one way. This is not my favorite way of doing it. I tend to use a regular knife, a paring knife or something like this, and put it flat like this. Then I need my glasses to be sure that I am on the, right in the middle of the hinge. And I use those fingers here to press inside to go into the muscle. Cut it open. Again, cut this one here to bring it here. Of course, if you get little neck muscle, they are smaller than that. And this is the cherry stone, then you have the top neck, and you have the very large one that we call the quahog. And that's what I enjoy with my family, a good glass of wine, white wine, in the winter. You can buy your calamari clean, but very often they come this way at the market, and you have to know how to clean them. So basically, you pull out the inside this way, which is that long thing. You can see the eye, of the animal here. What you do, you cut right above the eye, and inside that part of it, if I press, often there is that little round thing come. This is the beak, so I will remove that. The beak. And that, of course, is fried or whatever. In fact, this is the best part of it, in my opinion. Now, for the body, usually you want to remove the skin. And often you do that in water or under rolling water, but usually it comes out pretty good, pretty easy to remove that skin. Some people actually don't even bother removing that skin. And then inside here, if you touch, you will notice that there is a piece. It's a bone, it's actually the pan, they call that, and it's a cartilage. Pull out that cartilage here. You want to cut it into round ring, if you want to fry a ring of calamari, or you want to open it whole this way. To use it in one way or the other, to use it sometime in long strip, like this. But that's very tender. You can rewash it after. The shrimp usually will come without the head. They come pair weight. If you buy, for example, 15, 20, it means that there is 15 to 20 to the pound. 40 to 50, they are much smaller, 40 or 50 to the pound. If you buy under 10, for example, it's less than 10 to the pound, and they are more and more expensive. Usually here, you go around just to remove the shell here. Most of the time, or very often, people leave the tail. I usually remove the tail. If I remove the tail, I kind of press it a little bit here and kind of pull on it to try to get the tail here. See, the meat of the tail is inside. Now, after that, cut the top. You can see right the color here that there is a dark line, and that dark, this is the intestinal tract, which you do want to remove. And then after you wash it. And that's how you clean your shrimp. I'm cooking lobster today. When you buy lobster, usually I tend to favor the female with the eggs in it and a bit tender. Usually the body is slightly wider, but where you can see it is there. As you can see that this one is a male. The last two appendage here, which goes between the rib, are longer and hard, it's like a shell. And the body is slightly narrower. Here the body is slightly wider, the female, and you have those last two appendage are much more, are much smaller. So to kill a lobster, to grill it, you have to cut where the line is in between the eye, and the lobster doesn't have a brain, it just have a central nervous system. So you go down there and that's it. So you turn it around and continue on the same line to cut it into two pieces. You can see it here. Now, I remove the little rubber band here, of course, and you can see that in there, between the eye where I cut here, there is that bag. This is the stomach, usually full of gravel, and that you remove. The green here will turn bright red when it cooked. This is the roe of the female. The pale green here is the tamale, the liver or the tamale that the male has as well as the female, but that green, deep green roe, only the female has it because this is the roe. So to grill it, you put it this way. You want to break the claw because otherwise it makes it harder to take a towel on top to crack it this way. See, now it's cracked. And that's all there is to it. I like to do it fresh like this. Sometimes we put a little bit of herb or a stuffing inside here, some olive oil on top and up under the broiler for a few minutes. Very often, the lobster is poached, of course, and there is different way of poaching it depending the size that you have. I tend to put it sometime just in boiling water, let it come back to a boil, maybe boil a minute or so and leave it on the side. And you have to take the meat out of it. Take the meat out of it, the first thing you do, you break the tail, and then usually you want to keep all that juice for mixed to a mayonnaise or whatever. You crack the tail this way, and then get that lobster was just cooked. And that you can pull this out. Here. Usually the lobster will give you about a quarter of his weight. I'm saying that a pound lobster will give you 4 ounces of meat. Often we eat a great deal of lobster in summer because we think it's the lobster season, when in fact it's better in winter. Winter they have the hard shell lobster. In summer often the soft shell lobster have less meat in it. So the front is there. You want to take the juice, as I say again, and see the stomach here. I didn't split it in half, so the stomach is in one piece here, which is that bag, that sack that I saw you split in the other lobster. This would be the stomachs here, full of gravel inside. Okay. Sometimes we keep the end of it for decoration, and the tail. And now we break this. You want to break it at that joint. Aficionado will tell you that that particular joint is the best part of the lobster. This is the crusher, this is the pincher, the long one, and that's the stronger one. To remove the meat here, you want to break this at the joint, pull out the bone. There is a bone inside here which will come out, and the meat, you see, if you wiggle it right, that bone which is inside the meat comes out, and the meat which is inside there stays there. Break it. It's always better to cover it. And as you can see, this one for a big clove like this are the relatively small pieces of meat, which is right there. When you invite people to eat lobster, you know, you have them, give them one of those nut crackers, and they fight with it, but this is the joy of eating lobster in summer, you know. I have that whole piece of meat inside the claw here. It's coming out now. With that first part, which I say is the best, here. There. Right away here. For that one here. Now the tail itself is cut in half conventionally to look if there is any intestinal tract. This one seems to be clean, so we'll put it back there. And often the lobster will be presented this way with the front of the lobster here. The one here, you can do a puff paste, put that underneath. You have the whole meat of the lobster right there. Now, when I have a fish to scale, that happens often at my house, I tend to do it in a plastic bag like this, otherwise you make a real mess out of the kitchen. A serrated edge knife goes well with it, or in that case I use the shell of an oyster or clam and I go directly in it like this and I scrape it. I don't have to worry about where those scales will end up here, and that makes my wife happy. So I do it on this side. I'm going to flip the fish over, again on the other side. Okay, so those scales otherwise really get all over the place. So what I have to do now is to rinse that fish before I can bone it out. And now when you're ready to, fillet your salmon, place your knife under the gill here to put it flat on the central bone and just follow the central bone. This way. Now I cut flat on the bone, so the bone being flat here, there is a little recess right there, so there is a little bit of meat there that I'm going to remove, not to waste anything, and we can use that for tartare. This and on this side. Now here, what you want to do is to remove the rib cage that we have here. Slide your knife underneath and gently slide it, keeping your knife as flat as you can. The belly is pretty thin, so you have to use your knife flat. Remember, there is the rib cage, and above the rib cage there is a series of bones that would have been cut through it, so you can remove it with a plier in this way. They usually come out good because this is a fatty fish. If you do that with a fish which is drier, like a bass and all that, often when you pull out those bones, it sticks. You tear out the meat. So if this happened, what you would want is to take a bone like that, put your finger around and hold the flesh while you're pulling this out, so you avoid tearing the flesh. It's not the case in the salmon. That's it. All the bone is here. I think there is about 20 some bone, 28 bone. We can take the skin out of it now. If we need to take the skin for certain recipe, put it flat, hold it at the end and move your knife in a jigsaw fashion. Still pulling. The skin, of course, can be used, can be placed in the oven, a little bit of oil, salt on top of it, and it can dry out to make crackling to use in salad or other garnish on the top of the fish. Under the skin, there is always that layer of darker flesh. Again, using your knife flat, you want to remove most of it. Some people keep it. This is a type of meat which will turn really black when it's cooked, and it's much stronger in taste. So I will remove it. You can cut the belly and use it for the best tartare. And it's important that you cut that meat with a knife rather than putting it in the food processor. Otherwise it gets very pasty. Then of course, very often we use that for steak or gravlax. Like for example, if I do an instant gravlax, I will cut like if I were cutting smoked salmon into a thin strip. I will use a little bit of salt in the bottom, pepper, and you can do large platter of this or individual platter. Place it right on top. By the time the salt is melted, the salmon is cured. A little more salt on top. You can put a piece of plastic wrap, put another plate on top of it, do a second one, a third one, and they are ready now to be decorated and finished with a bit of oil. The tartare, we're going to put salt, pepper, a little bit of onion, not too many things. Dash of Tabasco, a good dash of olive oil here, and maybe some chive. And that's a fresh tartare. Okay, I can mix this. And as you notice, I have not put any vinegar or lemon juice in it. I could, but if I put the lemon juice, the citric acid will discolor the salmon. It's going to eat the protein and it will change color. What I want to do here is to cut a strip of cucumber. You leave the skin on. I do that often, season that with a dash of salt and sometimes a dash of vinegar, and that's it. It's cured. I would use it for this, top of the plate here, to do a bed, which would be very nice, but the question is not a question of being nice, it's a question of being good. And then my tartare in the center. And I can serve it just like this. If I want to be extremely lavish, then what I would want to do is to put a bit of caviar on top. And I have here a pressed caviar called payushnaya in Russian. And it's extremely concentrated in taste. The advantage, however, is that you can basically mold it the way you want. As I'm doing it here, to have a couple of teaspoons of it, I can roll it with a rolling pin or just press it with my hand as I'm doing here in a beautiful round. I can use the same thing of my caviar to cut this, to get it the same size. Remove the outside here. That makes it, of course, a bit more expensive, but certainly very elegant. a special dish. And then probably a few capers around and a little bit of very good olive oil. Okay, and I will have here a great tartare of salmon. For the gravlax here, you can do the same idea. Here I have some dill, so dill is a good idea with it. I have a couple of olive here. I can chop it coarsely. A little piece of red onion or shallots or regular onion. And a bit more of olive oil, of course. And here you have a great gravlax of salmon. And this is a couple of the many, many dishes that you can make with salmon. You know, for a good cook, it's good to know how to clean fish. First, you buy them less expensively, and you always need the bone anyway to do stock. This is monkfish, also called anglerfish, goosefish, frogfish, lot. Usually we call that lot in France. It's great because there is only one single bone in the center. You have to follow with your knife. Here's that single bone. You have those enormous fillets on the side. There is no bone in those fillets. The head of that animal, of that fish, is almost twice as large as the body. If that animal was here, the head would come up to here about. Really ugly fish, but beautiful flesh. So you go on the side, there is a big black flesh here, and I am going on the side to turn around it to separate. I'm using my knife here, kind of rolling it. On the side, basically to get the whole fillet out. Very white, beautiful flesh here. Okay, and you do medallion and saute it one way or the other. When you use a little bath like this, you do it with or without the fillet. And without the fillet, what you do, you cut under the gill like this to go flat on top of the fillet. And you want to follow the central bone here to the end, up to almost the end. You can flip this over if you want. Start there if you have to remove the skin. Again, in one streak. I will have that fillet here. Do on the other side. Basically have two fillets. You still have to remove the bone of the rib cage. But this is beautiful meat, very white, very firm, very tender. Here we are here. And there. There is certain type of fish, like a salmon. 10-pound salmon give you 5 pounds of flesh. By the time you get to something like a sole, it's 1 to 4. The 4 little fillet that you have around here, you can see there is a mark here. The bone goes up to that point. It's only this which is the meat. So the first thing you have to do is to cut the head against. You can use a scissor as well. The liver here, there is a lot of liver, a lot of guts. When there is raw, I used to keep the raw and cook the raw. My wife loved the raw of fish. I'm going to use a scissor here to cut, and I will follow that line here, which is actually the line of bone. I know it seems that you're removing a lot, but this is all bone. Now if I poach the fish, when I poach the fish, those bones may give me some taste to the stock. So so I may cut it more here. But there, see, those are all bone for a fish that I'm going to saute. With hundreds of different types of sole. The best, in my opinion, is still the double sole. But the flesh is so firm, you can saute it like a steak, on the barbecue. I like to keep the white flesh on. I just scale it. Some people remove it, tend to like it. As you can see, the scales are very small. And it browns better when you brown it on the white skin. For the black skin here, I remove it. You can start from the tail or here. You can get a little corner. It's slippery. Start to pull it out. That's it. That's it. A little piece of bone left here. And that's it. The sole is ready to be sauté or to be poached. The sole is cooked now. You can see, so a little bit of lemon juice. Make it foam. I'm going to do some chives on top of it. And then you could serve it this way. Conventionally, it is bone out. To bone it out, you follow the line in the center. And then with your knife, you pull it out. You can see that it will separate just at the bone because it's well cooked. Still a little pink in the center. I move it on this side. And now that I open both sides, I can remove actually that bone, which I can lift up just like this. Whoop. Usually it comes in one piece. I pretend I'm in the dining room and I'm not using my finger. And then you can place that fillet back on top, here and there. And actually you can serve it on a plate, or actually it's just as well served into this. Probably baste it with a little bit of that butter. And this is it, the sole meunière. Chicken is certainly the most used meat at my house. You know, broiled, grilled, sauté, poached, and so forth. This is a roast chicken. And for a roast chicken, I do remove the wishbone, which is here. You go with your knife on one side and the other side, and then with your index finger and your thumb, you go along the bone, get the end of it with the thumb, put your thumb in the back of it, and bring it back in front to get that triangle here that we call the wishbone here, that wishbone, which is right there, which is, you know, problem when you carve in the dining room, so now it's free. Usually for the roast chicken, I remove those two, the wing here and there. I will show you two ways of trussing chicken. One without a needle, one with a needle. One or the other, make sure that you use kitchen twine. And the one without needle, you slide it underneath and you cross above. And then you go under the tip of the drumstick and close. And bring the chicken on the side. And if I had not removed the wing, I could have anchored it behind the wing, but the wing has been removed, so I anchor it behind the neck here. See? Anchor it behind the neck. I have that other piece. You do 1, 2, even 3 turn, because when you pull it out there, then it doesn't release when you do that. Then you do a double nut, and that's it. Usually you're going to roast it 20-25 minutes on one side, 20-25 minutes on the other side, and then you finish it on the back and baste it as you go along. Now, if you want to use the trussing needle, which certainly when I was an apprentice, we use the trussing needle. There is at least 3 different ways with the trussing needle, but I will show you one. And you go in the center, you go here in a bone. You will notice that there is a bone here, but there is a soft part in one of the bone here, and that soft part go right in very easily. And you come back in the center of the leg here. Pull out your trussing needle, put the chicken on his back. From here you go through this. If you have enough skin, you should try to take the skin with it. Again, into the other wing. Now back on its back. So remember that I went from that soft part in the bone to the middle of this, across here. Now I do the reverse, to the center of the bone and that soft spot right there. Cut. That's it. And then above the leg here to finish right there. Turn it again a couple of times. Do a double knot. And that's it. The chicken is ready to be roasted. Now, when you cut chicken for stew, I will remove that wishbone. You have here. We'll remove this. And now to separate the chicken, one of the mistakes is to try to cut here. Use the weight of the chicken. Like for example, I have the weight of the chicken here. If I cut with the point of a knife, look what happened. That's it. You know, there is nothing really holding it except in the back now, that little thing that we call the oyster here. So I will go with my knife and cut that oyster. Now to open the leg, one of the mistakes is to extend the leg too much and it's hard to open. You have to bring that bone parallel to the carcass, grab it at the knee, and then it will crack open easily. You cut through the sinew, there is a large sinew here, you pull out, and that's it. The other leg, again, cut this way, oyster, bring it back to cut it at the sinew, and pull out. Now I have the whole breast, which is very large. If I want to separate it in two, I have to cut around the sternum here, which is the central bone. On one side, actually, and on the other side, here it is, this side and this side. I will put the chicken on its side. I know that there is an articulation right there, so I will go into that articulation here with my knife. If I don't find it, I jiggle a little bit to slide into the articulation. At that point, I hold the chicken with my knife and I pull out. One breast, same thing on the other side. Again, the articulation is right there, so I will cut to go into the articulation, hold it, pull out. As you can see here, I have left the two fillets. Now I run my finger to remove that fillet there, and that fillet here. And this is the whole carcass of the chicken. I've cut at the joint here, the joint here, the joint here, and the joint there. That's the four places where I have cut. This, usually, we cut the end of it. Could be this. This is a chicken for stew for 4 people, or 4 or more. Big breast. The fillet are left to cook with the breast, but more at the last moment because they are tender. And then the leg is usually cut at the joint between the drumstick and the thigh bone. By cutting this, it makes it shrink, so that as it starts cooking, it's going to shrink there and the bone will show. This is the chicken for stew. Now with this, what you can do here, and after the articulation here, trim the side. I do the same thing in the other one here and there, and I will use this. Now I put that on the side, those 2 bones are here. I will go with the over my hand, push down on those bones, push down on this, do the same thing on the other side, push down on the bone here, push down on this one. That's why you want to be after the articulation. So those bones are now loose. I can remove them again with my towel here, and then those 2 bones are out. You have the opening here of this. You can have a garnish of anything, meat or whatever. You may want to stuff it a little bit with a kind of meatball or whatever you have, and that make like little balloon. And then you can poach those or you can stew those. Okay, so we have now the little balloon, now the little chicken balloon. We can do what we call lollipops. You grab this here with a towel, it's easier with a towel, so that it's straight this way. Put your hand there and break it down at the joint. Put your thumb in the back and pull. Those 2 bones will stick out. You remove the end there that you use for stuck. Using your towel, you remove one of the 2 bones, the small one usually, and you're left with 1 bone. And this, you pull this out a little bit to turn it inside out to do what we call a lollipop, like this, that you can fry, or there is a different way of using it. It's often that a recipe asks you to stuff a leg of chicken, and often you buy it this way at the supermarket. But the way to do it is really to follow the bone. There is a thigh bone here, then there is the articulation, and then there is the bone of the drumstick. So you follow the bone on each side. This one, as you can see, after you go on each side, you could actually slide your knife underneath, scrape it a little bit, and then here, of course, you have to go around the articulation, because here you have the knee around it, which is what I'm doing now. And now that I'm around the articulation, I can scrape it again. And I can actually leave the bone, take the bone out. Usually we take the bone out. So here is the leg of chicken flat. And whatever stuffing you have in it, let's say some ground meat or whatever you may have, then you roll it on itself very tight, as tight as you can. And often in terms of cooking, what I do, I use a piece of plastic wrap on top, get it really tight here, around, roll it like a sausage. And often I put that in a piece of aluminum foil. And that goes into the oven, seasoning. Put into the oven, and after 15-20 minutes of cooking, it's hard enough, halfway cooked, I can remove the aluminum foil than this and continue roasting it. You know, grilling or broiling a chicken usually goes faster than the roasting. And this is the way I do it. Usually I take the end here of those, of the drumstick. You can of course do them with your knife, with this. I fold the wing underneath and I split it in half. It takes half of the time now to roast. Now I go on, see on each side of the neck here, with the point of a knife, I go through. If you feel you're not proficient enough with the knife, then use one of those to cut, as I'm going to cut on the other side here. Okay, that's kept for stuck. Now the secret of this, if there is a secret, is this. I really press it to have it. There is always the place where it doesn't cook completely, is at the joint here. So what do? I do a little incision right in the joint. Same thing on the other side here, in the joint. The second place where you look that it's never cooked enough is between the drumstick and the thigh. Same idea here. I cut a little bit in between. You won't even see it. I do the same thing for a turkey when I cook it like that, so the breast is not overcooked and the heat has the time to go there and it's not red at the joint here. It's great to grill or to broil the chicken this way. You can brush that up with mustard, honey, ketchup, Tabasco, a mixture of all of those to make a beautiful hot crust, and it's a great way of doing it. And now the boning out of the galantine. Galantine or ballotine. Galantine is if it's served cold, ballotine if it's served hot. We have to remove the wishbone here. Cut on one side, on the other side, and here to have that big triangle here, which is the wishbone. I'm going to cut the skin of the back now because I want to open the chicken completely. Now that chicken has an articulation here and there, here and there. That's the only place where I need a knife. The rest I'm going to pull. So first, let's move that up a little bit so I can show you the articulation is there. I can feel it. With my knife here, wiggle it, I get into the articulation there. Turn it, do the same thing on the other side. Articulation here. Now I've cut on both sides. So I can grab it here. I put my finger through it to hold it and I pull out. Actually, I'm not really pulling out, I'm turning. I think this until I see the little oyster here. Change hand. Same thing on the other side. I pull until I see the oyster. Now here is the front of the chicken. The two fillets are still there. Put my two fingers on the sternum here and I go down until the end. On the side now that the second articulation, which is the oyster here, again, bring back the leg to crack it open. You can hear it crack. Cut through the large sinew and pull out. Same thing on the other side. I will cut the oyster, cut through the sinew and pull it out. That really should not take me much more than like a minute or so to bone out the chicken to that extent. There is the two fillets again left here. Usually just run with your finger along the bone here to be able to remove that large fillet, the other one. And where I cut was that joint and that joint, that joint and that joint, that's it. You can see that chicken here, the end of the sternum, is the cartilage. Chicken is like 3 months old. This is bone, it's a black bone. And 2 months later, it's going to be black up to here, up to here, up to here, and eventually you have a hand, and the bone is very hard at the end. Same thing when you go hunting. You get the sternum of the animal to know the age. Okay, now I want to bone out the leg. All I do, I cut all around so that I'm able to hold it and I start scraping. I scrape. This, of course, is the thigh bone. So I've tried the thigh bone. I could cut it at the junction, but if I cut it at the junction, I have nothing to hold it. So what I have to do here is really to cut all around until I have passed the articulation. Then I can start scraping it on the bone. And now that's it. I have the whole leg bone out. I'm here. I don't really want to cut the bone here because it shrinks in the boning process. So I break the bone with the back of the knife and remove it. After it's cooked, we trim this. Same thing on the other side. Cut around to be able to hold. This is all bone out. The only two pieces of bone are here. I can leave those in if I want to remove. I hold the bone from underneath. I have to cut all around the articulation. That's where it's held, and then push down. Even here I can see there is sinew still around. Sinew still around, and then I push down and remove the bone of the wing. Pull out. Now this is totally bone out. I have those two fillets, and you can see those two fillets have a long sinew inside. If you want to remove those sinew, which usually we do, you have to bring them to the side of the board and hold them with a towel, the way they slide. Keep your knife flat on top of it, and I scrape it out, you see, and the whole sinew stay there. I will bring that back and put it where there is no meat, around here. There is a bit less meat here, so I cut a little bit of that meat here and there. And now it's about the same amount over. What do I do on top of it? Salt, pepper, and a stuffing. I have all kind of different stuffing. In that case here, I have spinach. The spinach are sauté with a little bit of garlic. You can stuff it with meat, with rice, with the only difference, the only thing that you have to realize is that when you use a cooked stuffing inside, you don't have to worry too much about the internal temperature as much as if you put like ground pork meat. If you put ground pork meat, you have to be sure that it goes to about 160 degrees or more internal temperature. In that case here, I'm going to put some cheese and some bread. Kind of very home type of a stuffing that should be. Plenty here. More cheese maybe on top. And that's it. We're ready to cook it. So what you want to do is to bring back the side in the center here nicely. Bring this one back again so we join. Gently grab it, turn it over. You want to be sure that that skin goes underneath here. This is reconstitute. See, there is a piece of skin which is cut here, and there is nothing you can do about it. If you do a galantine like that, when you go buy your chicken, make sure that you check out a chicken where the skin is not already torn. And now we attach it. What you want to do is to make it very taut to the table to slide underneath. Attach it at the end, the two legs. And now you use that little loop, we call a half hitch, here just like this. And you do that loop, you let that go, you grab it here again and slice it nice to the table. Then ease it in top to make it get as tight as this. Again, you have that loop that I bring underneath and continue turning here, here, and that's about enough to hold. So I could cut the string gently. I'll flip it over, try to bring the skin here. If you have a dressing which run, you may put a little piece of aluminum foil. Now I bring the string around so that it looks top and bottom the same again. I bring it back to where we started and we attach it right there, and we have now the poulet en saucisse, you know, the sausage chicken that you carve, roast in the oven. You roast them around, you bring them, and here is my galantine now. It's been cooked for a little while. As you can see here, even now you would want to remove the string finally now, and also cut those two legs that I told you not to cut to start with. I have a lot of good natural juice here. The leg. And that's it. My chicken, whoop, is ready to go. Take a clean knife here. Couple of the chicken inside the way it looks. If I use a natural sauce, just go on top of it like this. Sometimes, you know, in the old style, you want to carve your chicken in the dining room, and you will notice that you use again the same place where we use it to bone out the chicken. Grab one leg this way, cut the skin around, and you will crack it open. It will come off the carcass, in fact, much more easily than it did when it was uncooked. Again, now the other leg, you go into it, cut the skin around, and you crack it open. Now we go back to the joint of the wing here. You cut a piece, again, grab it, and it could come out. We do the other side, and again, it will come out this way. I have not cut the breast in two pieces here. I have left a piece of the sternum here, so you can cut, remember, where the wishbone used to be here. You can pull it out, and again, that piece, the bone will come off the bone right there, and we will be left again with the same carcass that we had when we bone out the chicken. So what happened is that you put it back there, take that piece of meat, to place back on the chicken here. You want to take your wing here. You want to place the other breast right there. The leg, the second leg. You want to be nice presentation, maybe with a nice bunch watercress and chicken go so well together, and probably drip a little bit of your natural juice on top. And this is it. Your simple roast chicken with a natural juice and watercress. Very often nowadays, you go to large supermarket and you can find all kind of meat like this. This is a whole fillet of beef, complete fillet, also called the tenderloin. It's about close to 6 pounds clean. There is a big layer of fat here. I bet you with a layer of fat untouched would be about 7.5 pounds, quite a large one. So what you want to start pulling out on the silver skin, and it came with what we call the chain here. That thing attached to it is the chain, and we want to remove that because there is a lot of kind of a sinew inside. Note that you discard it, but you can do is to spend some time on it. You know what I do, and scrape it to the sinew like this. You can see all those sinew there. I scrape the meat off the sinew, and I do to form into great hamburgers. Then there is still, as I said, a fair amount of fat, and underneath the fillet, this is the head of the fillet, and underneath there is a layer of fat here, again, which is almost like the chine, you know, which kind of come out easily by itself. Now the fillet, a little more silver skin here. I am going now, this is the head of the fillet with that big knob. We separate it a little bit here because that silver skin kind of go inside a little bit, and we want to remove that silver skin. So you go with your knife this way, then you hold it, and you go. See, what you want to do is to really scrape. So you see the way I hold my knife, not flat, not this way, but slightly higher so that I can scrape against the skin, so I don't remove any meat with it, you know. But this is really, really tough, that silver skin. Now, often you roast a whole fillet like this. You will put the tail back here and attach it so the same thickness is throughout, so it cooked at the same speed. Or very often we divide it into different pieces. So let's say this is the top. We usually will cut the whole head of the fillet here, where that is, into one large. And that whole head is going to be done into a large steak we call a Chateaubriand for 2 or 3 people. Here are what are called tourne-dos, you know, and the tourne-dos in about 8 ounces. We start cutting smaller pieces. We call it the petit filet mignon. We have the petit filet mignon, and then finally, often with the tail, we cut it into strip to do a beef stroganoff. Beef stroganoff is sauté with sweet pepper, sauté like that. It's a delicious, it's an instant stew. You sauté it and serve it rare. The petit filet mignon, then the larger tourne-dos, and finally the big piece of meat, which often we wrapped. You wrap to make it stand up. Pound it into a Chateaubriand. You wrap it in something so you don't break the meat too much. So you will have a large steak here, which is going to serve 3 or 4. Usually those are grilled or sauté. So we have the ground meat that you do hamburger with. We have the petit filet mignon. We have the big tourne-dos. We have the large Chateaubriand. And finally, the tail of the fillet for stroganoff. I have a beautiful steak here. This is a strip loin or a New York strip. There is 4 or 5 names for this, but it's certainly the best steak, and there is no meat like we have in America. This is cut to about 8 ounces, you know, and I can put it down, pound it a little bit, and I'm going to grill it. A dash of salt, dash of pepper. Of course, I do a lot of my grilling outside, but I wanted to show you that it can be done inside. Dash of olive oil on top. And there is a special technique. It's not the only technique, but the technique that I use for quadrillage. So you put it on the side here, and that has to cook depending how you like your steak, but certainly at least a minute before you flip it over. Tiny bit of oil on top as well, so that it's oil on both sides. Now the proper technique, I start from here and to go here, and after we'll go this way and this way. So now I'm ready to flip it. It should be marked, as my pan is really hot. So now, you see from here, I put it there, and the lines are the opposite of this. You can flip it only twice. I like to flip it 4 times. I think that it equalizes the cooking from one side to the other, and there is no, the center, the exact center, are the proper color. And now, see, I will flip it so that it goes in that direction. Remember, from here to here, now this way. Here. And as you see, now the line will be in sync with this. So remember, this way, now this way, and now this way. That's it. That's it. My steak is cooked. You can see here the quadrillage. You can see here the quadrillage. One side, same than the other side. That's ready to be served for medium rare. I would usually put a little bit of herb butter on top of it. Tarragon lemon juice, butter, cracked pepper, and that's it. Now as you see, that steak should be about medium rare this way. This is the way I like it. Juicy and with the redness right in the center of it. You see there is a certain amount more cooked here and there, but the redness is there. This is heaven. Really good. A new way of cooking today for young chef is the circulator, so-called. So-called cooking sous vide, because most of the things that you cook in there are under vacuum packed. I have short ribs here, which have been cooking 24 hours. It can cook up to 2 days, 48 hours at low temperature. And the circulator itself is just water with that machine, which will keep an exact temperature. I can cook eggs in it, as I have here, at very low temperature also, for like an hour, to have an excellent result. I have a sausage here, which is cooked in aluminum foiled, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So here is the way I do that sausage. I have a pound of meat here, ground pork, a little bit of garlic, I use some black chanterelle, which often they call poor man's truffle. It's a chanterelle that we find in the wood, and this one were dry, and I reconstitute them in water. Some pistachio nuts. Now the secret is to use a curing salt here. It's a curing salt which gives you the beautiful red color that you have in hot dog, pastrami, corned beef, and so forth. Ground pepper, fair amount of ground pepper, and a little bit of white wine. You mix everything together. Your hand is the best tool to mix. And after you've mixed this, this should cure for a couple of days. In your refrigerator, it's fine. So this is the same way you do a regular salami, and then you hang up and dry it. In that case, we're going to cook it. Or you mold it into a piece of plastic wrap, into a sausage, about 2.5 inches thick, for a pound of meat here. Wrap your sausage and make it tight, as tight as you can here. You can roll it around nicely. You see those beautiful wild mushrooms there show through. Then you put that into a piece of aluminum foil. And again, it should be tight. Close the end of it. And this is it. After a couple of days, you drop it in there, and I cook that at 150 degrees there for about an hour and a half. And this is what I have here. I have a potato salad, which goes so well. The potato salad with a sausage. And here is our sausage here that you will cut into beautiful slice. And as you can see, with really a beautiful color because of the curing salt. Nothing better than a sausage poached like that and served on a bed of potato salad with mustard, olive oil, garlic in it. This is the beautiful leg of spring lamb. Beautiful, about 3.5, 4, 5 pounds, depending. This is the whole leg, except sometimes it comes with the shank bone here. This is the articulation of the femur, and you have the shank bone on top. So you have to remove it. This has been removed. This is what we call a gigot in French, and this is the classic type of Sunday meal, you know, where you cook your gigot, taking a little bit of the fat. You'll see that the fat is mostly on the hip part of it, have a certain layer, and the fat of the lamb is very saturated, strong, so you tend to remove it. As I'm doing here, very often we make hole in it like this, and you put a clove of garlic or a sliver of a clove of garlic, a little bit all over, salt, pepper, maybe a bit of rosemary, thyme, and that's it. You roast it in the oven and cut it right on the bone. However, I want to show you how to bone it out. That boning out is the same thing with a veal, which would be about 50 pounds, and of course with beef, which is even larger. The muscles are the same. So next to this here, you have that piece of meat. I'm going to start opening here and pulling out as soon as you see the separation of muscle. This is it. This is what we call the top round. You can see that as the muscles separate, you can see fiber, you know, in between. So you just follow those. See, I'm following that here. This is the largest muscle of the leg. Here it is. And this is the top round. What do you do with it? You do a little roast. You can even cut steak out of it. If it were the beef, then you would remove a thin skin that we have on top, which in fact I can do it. Usually you don't do it with the lamb. We call that the blanket. And of course on the beef it's going to be much larger than that. Now you continue boning out. It's really a question of following the bone here. So you have that bone at the end of the femur, and you have the articulation of the knees, and it goes down. Often you will find those legs of lamb also totally bone out, ready for you to put in the barbecue. I will continue cutting, following the bone on each side, and this one you can see that this is the shank piece of meat, which is very moist, great to do stew with. And now I have my bone here. Very often, as I said, you have the whole thing, including the top round, which would have been here, and that you roll it together and make a roast. Here I have separated the top round. I continue here. You can see where it separates. You can also see that there is that piece of the knee, I mean the cartilage here, and that's why this one is called the top knuckle, that muscle. At the end here, where we had more fat on top of it, this is probably the choicest part of it in some way in terms of tenderness. This is The top sirloin. The top sirloin, you can do a steak out of it. It's part of the hip, and that's very, very tender. That's one, as I said, which separate here. There is also in between, like here, some connective tissue, connective meat, and that is used for, you know, to stew or to ground it, to do merguez, for example, which is a lamb sausage. But I would use those pieces for. This would be the top knuckle. As you can see here, this is where I had the shank. You can see those fiber. Again, I pull this out. And this is the shank here that you buy. And the shank, as you know, is very tender, very moist for a stew, not to roast. So this is your shank. And those two pieces of meat left that I have here is the bottom round. And the bottom round is divided into two pieces, the eye round and the flat. In the center of that, there is always a large piece of fat here. People always used to say you have to remove it because there is a gland in the center. And it is true. You can see there is a gland in the center, but I don't think there is anything wrong with that. Here, that long piece, you see narrower, is probably the toughest part of the leg. And this is the eye round. If you remember, when you do a roast, you have an eye round, and that eye round is a long piece of meat like this, which is pretty tough, and that type of meat is usually never roasted. It is used to braise. And the other part here of the bottom round is called the flat. And if I had to do a top round, I think I would take that piece over the other, remove some of the silver skin. And that basically it. Here is the bottom round. So the division of this is the top round, the bottom round, which is divided between the eye round and the flat, top knuckle, great roast, the shank for a stew, and the top sirloin on the hip, the most tender part. That, of course, is much larger in the veal, but the division is the same. Now the kidney, they come from the animal all encased in that envelope of fat. You can see here, so you have to remove this. Unfortunately, as you can see, this one is cut here. They're all cut because it's the USDA, the meat inspector, you know, who come and cut each one of them to check for disease. So in one way it's good, but they should have a better cut than that. So we want to remove that at the end. Conventionally, when you get them, you would cut them, you would split them open to grill, for example. And after that, you will have to remove that skin. You know, on the outside here, here, and there, all around. So that they are completely clean. Now, if you want to saute the kidney, you will open them in the same way, except after they are open like that, you will cut them completely and remove that center part here, here and there. That's it. And the rest of the kidney here is cut into pieces, sauté with mushroom, usually with mushroom, sometimes a bit of white wine, red wine. That's standard. For the skewer, you go with your skewer on one side of the center, come back on the other side, and again put a bit of oil on top. Sometimes you put mushroom in between, oil, and right on the grill. It's delicious. So here the rabbit, this is a young rabbit, 3-4 months, the color of the skin, the fat, and that will be tender. So this is divided into different pieces. I open the belly, it already has been eviscerated, but only the man guts, not the other part here. And you have to be careful because you have the guts here, which are full of gut and bile, so you have to remove that. That's next to the liver. Beautiful liver here. On this side you can see the kidney are in there in their envelope of fat, and farther inside here you will have the lung, which again we use in the stew. See, the lung will have that color. What I like to do after that is to clean a little bit the inside, and then we divide the rabbit. The two back legs are going to be used together. Now what happened in those two back legs here, you have to cut between the two legs to crack the bone. Actually it's easier from this side to crop that bone here and open it, because very often at the end of it there is still the end of the intestinal tract. I want to remove here. Okay, now my leg is cut in two, and usually 4 pieces. Two back leg. Now the front leg are cut at the joint. You can see the joint of the clavicle here. If you follow the bone, this will be the front leg. This is one of my favorite pieces personally, because it's very, very moist. There is more bone, but it is truly very moist. Okay, this is all of the rib cage, and we cut it to the beginning of the rib cage here. The rib cage is cut into usually 3 pieces. Okay, this is for stew, this is for stew, roast, and the saddle, what we call the saddle, the place where you sit down, we fold it underneath. This would be the loin in the beef, you know, strip loin. That we roast separate, although you can also cut it and put it in the stew. So we'll have the saddle, the 2 back leg, front leg, near the neck, finally the liver here, and the lung. And that's how you divide the rabbit in my kitchen. Stock is very important in the kitchen. Brown stock, white stock. The difference is that basically you take bone, put water in it, boil it, you have white stock. Take the bone, brown it in the oven, put water in it, cook it, you have brown stock. You reduce the brown stock, it becomes demi-glace or glaze. So there is all kind of name, which basically the same product depending on the level of reduction, level of intensity, and so forth. Usually you don't put salt in stock because you never know where you're going to reduce it. This is a white stock, chicken bone, and I have already skimmed it, but I think it needs more skimming. I've already removed a fair amount of fat, and you remove what comes to the surface, scum, fat, and so forth, as much as you can. And as you can see it here with the bowl of the ladle, I'm pushing it on one side, then turning this around and picking up as much of the fat as I can, and I have quite a lot here. You want to keep it as clean as possible, and basically by the time you strain it, you can leave it in the refrigerator, the fat comes to the top, and the day after you remove whatever are hardened to the surface. To remove the fat left over, and when I need it, I can reheat it. So you want to strain it through a fine strainer, or double or triple mesh strainer. And now I'm going to clarify the stock, do a clarification, what we call a consommé. The process of clarification is the process by which you take a stock which is kind of cloudy and make it absolutely crystal clear. And it's done with a coagulant. When I was a kid, we still use blood, but basically just like in wine, we use egg white now. You use green with that. And here I have the green of leek, the green of celery, parsley. You don't really need any big thing because it's not going to cook very long. And then my egg white. I have 4 egg white here. I put a little bit of water because the stock is hot and I don't want it to choke the egg white too much. I have peppercorn. And then I'm putting salt in it because there is no seasoning in my stock. Now, if I have a stock which is not very strong, I will add like 1 pound, sometimes 2 pounds of ground meat here, very lean ground beef, to strengthen the stock. If I use ground beef, then of course I have to cook it for an hour and a half, otherwise what's the point of using the beef? I'm losing it. But if the stock is strong enough, all I want to do is to clarify it. Then as soon as it comes to a boil, it boils a couple of minutes, I get the taste of tarragon, the green, it's like an infusion, like a tea. Then I can stop it and strain it. So from that stock here, now this is an interesting process because it seems that it gets worse and worse as you cook it. And it does to a certain extent, and all of a sudden it's like magical, it clarified. So this has to come to a boil. As you can see here, I've known people who throw out their consommé when it's halfway done like that because talking about clarification, because people think it's getting worse and worse and worse and getting totally muddy. This is the way it should be. Starting boiling on the side. So you have a raft, it's called a raft to form on top, or a crust. And of course, as soon as it boils, last time you stir it, you don't want to disturb it anymore. Okay, that's it. And I will lower the heat, stop the heat practically, not completely. Often I put it on the side like this, you know, so that you make a little hole and it starts filtering through that hole here. And you can see now already, except for the segment that there is in it, the liquid is going to be very clear. So this is the ultimate soup, what we call the consommé. And I can let it set for 5 minutes and then strain it. If I want to do an aspic is a consommé, but in the clarification, you mix some gelatin in it, unflavored gelatin, of course. Mix in your clarification, and you do the same process. When it cools off, it hardens in aspic. The consommé is cooked now and ready to be strained. I'm going to strain it now. I wanted to show you the clarity of the consommé now through the little hole that I did, how clear it is. And remember the stock that I did it with, here is the stock, and here is the consommé there. You can really see the clarification. Now this doesn't even need to be strained, but to be sure we always strain it, and very often through even paper towel to make absolutely sure that there is absolutely no speck of anything in it. You don't really strain it directly in your serving plate. That's it. And here is my consommé, the ultimate bouillon. Crystal clear and delicious. The bread is the staff of life. It's always fun to make bread. I like to use, if I can get it, usually organic bread flour. And you can see that this one is proofed. I mean, basically bread is flour, water, a dash of salt. You have to let it proof a couple of times. This one has been proofing. Then you break it down to deflate it. Then you use a bit of flour on this. And of course it can be shaped in any old way, you know. It's a question of imagination and so I want to cut a piece of dough on my baguette, piece of dough for the épi. Other one can be made into individual roll. So what you want to do is to really try to tighten that dough, bring it back on itself a couple of times to make a seam underneath. I'm going to put the dough to proof. You can even put a bit of cornmeal underneath, which is a good idea for the crust underneath. If you want to do an épi here on this one, you can cut it with a scissor. You would go almost to the end of the bread and cut it like that to bring it on the side. Okay, and this of course has to proof before you can score it and put it into the oven. And very often I put something on top like this to let it proof for an hour and a half before you put it into the oven. Again, when the dough has risen a couple of times, you can bring it on itself like that to give it more body. You know, turn it upside down, or you can do it from the top. The seam is always underneath. To prepare a large bread, what we call the gros pain, you know, the big bread, which is often what we do at home. Again, maybe a bit of cornmeal underneath. This has body now. We put it there and it has to proof again. So cover it with something which fit, which will give space for it to inflate. And then when it kind of double in volume, you can mark it and put it into the oven. You know, when the dough has proofed again, it's ready to go into the oven. You can see this one when I move it like this. It's soft, it's nicely proof. I like to put a little bit of flour on top of it, even on this. Give it a country look. And then I use a serrated edge knife to cut through it. You know, like 3 times here, you can see. And on the baguette, again, 4 or 5 times. Usually where one line finishes, the other one starts. And when I put it into the oven, I spray a little bit of water in the oven to start the steam and start the crust. It makes a thicker, better crust. The bread is still hot from the oven here, but you see it has a nice texture. It's aerated enough. And certainly the big bread here is really hard and the way it should be, but again, it's very hot out of the oven. Ooh, it's hot. I can't think of eating any meal without bread. I'm going to make mel bateaux for you that people buy in store. This is a beautiful Pullman bread, and I cut thin slice of bread in the toaster. The mel bateaux was developed by the chef Escoffier for the soprano Nelly Melba, who liked her toast very, very thin, so he cut toast this way. Then you trim it. Actually, you don't even have to trim it. And when it's still warm, then you put your knife across here from one side to the other, and it will separate into those two ultra thin toast. This is what a real Melba toast is. Very, very thin. If you were to try to toast a piece of bread that thin, it would curl up and burn. So you need to do what I'm doing, and even here, I will cut it even without removing the crust. And now you see it works out just as well. This is the ultimate sandwich with butter on top. And caviar, a nice black sturgeon. By definition, if you say caviar, it means sturgeon. If it's salmon caviar, it has to be salmon caviar or whitefish caviar or trout caviar. But if you just say caviar, caviar is sturgeon. From the small one, say Ruga, to the Ossetra, to the other one. This is a really nice toast sandwich. You know, a sandwich of caviar with a Melba toast. You know, when my granddaughter come to see me in Connecticut, she wants crepe for breakfast. And I will show you how to make it really easy and very fast. Putting the heat on now, and by the time, I'm going to put a tablespoon of butter in there, and by the time that butter is ready, my crepe batter is ready. I have about half a cup of flour there. The proportions are not very important. A tiny dash of sugar, salt, 1 egg. I'm putting a dash of milk in it, and then I mix it. You don't want to put too much milk to start with. I'll show you what, because you want the mixture to be thick. If the mixture is thick, like it is here, then the thread of the whisk can go through it and liquefy it to make it really smooth. What I mean is that if you put all the liquid in it, you mix it, you have nice little dumpling all over the place. Yeah. But now that it's thick like this, then I can put the rest of the milk a little more. I want a crepe batter very thin. If you have a crepe batter which is thin, you do very crepe, which we call crepe dentelle. I'll show you what the crepe dentelle are. Now this is melted. I'm putting it in there, and I'm ready for my first crepe. That's it. Now the first crepe is usually for the dog, but the dog is not here today. Don't be afraid if you didn't put enough batter. I can always add a little more. Better to put less than more. So when you see getting brown at the edge here, I usually, you can flip it, but sometimes it's harder. Probably with one hand and turn it over. This is the first side of the crepe. It's always the nicest one, first time. And what you do when it's finished cooking, like it's close to finish now, I can flip it at that point. And I will slide it on my plate so that when I turn it, the first side, which is nicer, shows. Now the secret of a thin crepe is that you don't put it in the middle. You don't put your batter in the middle. You put on one side and spread very fast all around. You see? I didn't even put enough, but doesn't really matter. I add more. Again, and you don't have to put any butter in between, although Julia would have wanted me to put butter in between. She did. Now it's nice and brown. You see, I have one crepe. When my granddaughter is there, she sits on the other side of the counter. My daughter did the same thing when she was small. We have jar of jam. She take apricot jam and even chocolate. She grated with one of those grater. You see, let's say I put too much in it. That's the opposite of what I did before. Then put it back in your pan right away. Of course, what happened here, you're going to have a lip. Doesn't really matter. You can always cut the lip and remove it. you know, this way, it's better, as I said, to put less than more. And this is not a crepe pan, it's just a non-stick pan, 9 inches, whatever. Crepe pan often are very small and I don't see the point. Sometimes I do it even on a bigger pan. So I give 1 or 2 per person. So again, as you see, the nice side will be here when I fold it. And that's all there is to make crepe. And now I will show you how to make crepe Suzette. Originally, the crepe Suzette were done at the table of the customer with lump of sugar that were rubbed into the skin of the orange. They become all orange because of the skin, the essential oil, and they were crushed in the pan with sugar and eventually butter and mixed with Grand Marnier and cognac. We do it easier nowadays. I'm going to put a piece of butter to start with, and then use that miracle thing there to do the orange zest. Going a bit too fast there, and then now I'm going to put the juice. Now let's see, I put sugar in there because we want to do a caramel eventually, and then the juice of the orange. That is the base of the crepe Suzette. So here I have that mixture of sugar, orange zest, orange juice, all of this, and what you want to do now is to dip your crepes in it, and you want to cook them a little bit so they caramelize. So, you see what I do? I dip them on the side, then fold them in 2 and in 2 again. I'm going to dip it this way, and then down and in 4s. I'll do like 4 crepes at the time, which would be 2 portions here. Fold them here, and in 2 again. Again here. I want to get the taste here. You see, fold it again, and 4. And now I should have my 4 crepes in 1 layer here, and now they will caramelize. They should be pretty close now. I can fold it, yeah. Grand Marnier and cognac. Move this a little bit. Don't look at it when you put the alcohol in it. And you will continue to flambe a little bit. And now you can get them one by one or fold them again. Wow. I think the sugar is caramelizing and beautiful color here. Here. 3, 4 crepes with a little bit of the caramel on top. But usually you would not even serve them in a platter. You would go around and serve 1 crepe per person directly into your diner plate. And that's how I make my crepe Suzette. Okay, there is nothing more useful and classic, in fact, than a pie dough. You can use it for so many different types of things. Sometimes I do it with butter and some lard, especially if I do like a quiche, where you have bacon in it and so forth, and the lard really gave it a great deal of flakiness. Often, however, I do it just with the butter, and when I measure the flour, I go directly in the bin like this and equalize it with a knife. Now, this is important because 3 cups of flour done this way is about a pound. If you sift that pound of flour, you'll probably have 3.5 cups. That aerated when you sift it. So here I have 1.5 cups of flour, a little dash of salt, a dash of sugar. That's it. And the butter. Now the butter here, I have about 4 or 5 ounces of butter. And I could let it turn in the machine long enough so that the moisture in the butter will be practically enough to cohere the dough, get it together. If, however, I process it only a little bit so that I can still see the piece of butter, then I will have to add water. If I do that, I will have some of the flakiness that I get in a puff paste if the butter is still apparent. See, if I do it this way, you could see that if I get that dough here, I'm going to have pieces of butter all over the place. And that's the principle of a puff paste, where the dough is separated from the butter each time in layer. So this is not exactly the same, but a little bit. So there I will put some water. And again, the amount of water depends on how much you incorporate the flour and the butter together. Here probably like 3 tablespoons, 3, 4. Let's see. Just a couple of pulsings this way. I want to grab it with my hand. I want to be able to hold it together this way. That's enough. So the dough is not completely incorporated, as you can see here, and that's what I want. I will get flakiness out of that dough. It will be tender and flaky. I'll get that dough together and I can see that it's holding together, and that's what I want. And I will use, of course, a little bit of flour to roll it. Now, a lot of people tell you to let the dough rest. We know when you process it so minimally as I did, you don't really have to let it rest. Okay. Yes. See, it doesn't have much elasticity because I have not worked it out with the water. What I'm saying is that you can work flour and butter together and it doesn't get elastic. It's only by the time you put the water in it, then it develops the gluten and it becomes elastic. The ultimate dough this way is a bread dough, water and flour. The ultimate dough at the other end of the spectrum is a cookie dough, flour and butter. This one is somewhat in the middle. I can see here. And I can see the streak of butter throughout. But I can see butter throughout here. What you want to do now, you want to roll your dough directly on your rolling pin and unmold it the other way, meaning that this was the part which was on the table before, that is the part with the flour. There is no flour underneath. Now, edge it inside. You don't. And usually you want to do a bit of a border with the dough. So what you do, you grab a little piece of dough and bring it inside so it gives you a bit of a rim. And then now you can cut the dough with your rolling pin one way and then the other way. Now you have that rim here that you want to press it so that it looks nice and neat and the same all around. Okay, you can cook it this way. You can even mark it if you want with a little bit of with a fork or a knife all around if you want to get an edge. Now that dough can be filled up with apple or different type of fruit and cooked directly, or sometimes we bake blind the dough, so-called, that is a piece of paper, piece of paper, a piece of aluminum foil, sometimes it holds it, some way to cook it without anything inside and then finish it up after. The pâte sucrée, or the sweet dough, is almost like a cookie dough. It's done with butter, 1 egg yolk, flour, and so forth, and it goes very well in the food processor, but I wanted to show you how to make it by hand, or the technique there. So I have the stick of butter. I have 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar here, dash of salt. I'm going to start breaking this into pieces. And sometimes there is practically no liquid added to it, and that's why the dough is going to be tender. That's why the dough can be made thick. And even if it's thick, the heat goes through because the dough is porous. And because the dough is porous, then it's like a thick cookie. I'm going to add, maybe 1 tablespoon, maybe not even of water or milk, and then an egg yolk in there. Again, working the dough this way. I mean, the technique, proper technique for that is to bring the dough together and to crush it with the palm of your hand. In a technique we call phraser. You crush it so it totally homogenizes together, which of course is exactly the opposite of what you would want to do with a pâte brisée or certainly a puff paste. Okay, this is a bit of a messy dough. You can add a little bit of flour and clean your finger with the flour. Okay. Then we're going to roll it like for a round tart. I can practically extend it with my hand, you see. A rich dough. And you don't do it as thin as you would do a pâte brisée, you know. Very delicate. About a circle like this. Again, the same idea. You unroll it. And now you bring the side on itself to make a shell. I turn it on itself like twice. And again, the type of thing that you could not do, you would not want to do with, as I say, a pie dough, because the thickness of dough will get raw in the center and will not really work. But the pâte sucrée will be like a cookie. You want to press it together to make an edge. And the way you want to press it, you want to have it like a pyramid, you know, so that the top is pointed and the base is thicker, so that it doesn't collapse on itself. And then to finish it up, you can press it this way with your index finger. And you can cook this like a large cookie and then fill it up with raspberry, for example, a bit of raspberry preserve in the bottom, fresh raspberry, a glaze on top. And that's a wonderful tart, and that keep a long time, several days cook like a cookie, the delicious dough. You know, puff pastry, pâte feuilletée in French, we call that 1,000 leaves because it goes into tiny leaves. It's probably one of the most challenging dough to do for the chef. It's made of a bread dough, if you want water flour, which you spread. Then you put butter onto it, you close it, you now have a layer of bread dough all around and a layer of fat in the center. That's 1, 2, 3, bread dough, fat bread dough. You roll it into a rectangle, fold it in third, so it's 3 times 3, actually 8, because where it touches the dough, it's still dough. And you do that 6 times and you have about 1,500 layers of bread dough and butter, which when you put into the oven, the bread dough, the water in the bread dough develop into steam. It's kind of waterproof by the butter, and it's kind of developing into the multi-layer effect you have in Napoleon, vol au vent, and so forth. A pound of flour and about 8 to 10 ounces of water, depending on the humidity. Okay, that would be my détrempe. So this is if you want your bread dough, of course, without yeast. Actually, if you put yeast in it and you roll it like a puff paste, you have croissant. The croissant is a mixture of puff paste, if you want, and brioche. That is, it's a dough rolled like the puff paste, but there is yeast in it. Okay. So now we have to extend this. Usually you let it rest in between. There is about 3 or 4 different ways that I make puff paste. The classic way, the most classic of all, is really to do a square of the détrempe, then you have a square of the butter in the center, and you bring the 4 corners together and you start rolling. Here I do it slightly different. It goes faster, and I think the result is just as good. So I will extend that dough. Don't be afraid to use flour here at that moment, it's okay. Into a long rectangle like this. So I have a pound of flour here, and I have like 3/4 of a pound of butter. You can go up to a pound of butter. And I will arrange that butter on like, not quite to the end over there, about the equal amount all over. So what you do here, you bring back the third of the dough which is not covered with any butter on top, and then you fold that against on top. It means that to a certain extent you already have several layers. So that gave you time. Okay. Now we give it the first turn. I can see that my dough is still rollable, doesn't have much elasticity yet. So I kind of break it down a little bit like this. The first couple of dough are the most important. That equalize the butter all over the place. You can see through the dough those layers of butter here. Yeah. Now it is the time to do the turn. There is 2 types of turn. You have a single turn or a double turn. You want to make sure that you have no flour in the center of it, so you want to brush it out. If I fold it in 3, I go here, bring that here, that gives me 3 layers, 1, 2, 3. That's a single turn. I want to do a double turn. We do occasionally, again, to go faster. I go in the center here, make sure that it's sealed nicely. Again, in the center here, brush it with any dough. I'm going to make sure that it's together and fold it this way. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 rather than 3 dough. So it's actually 1.5 turn. The puff paste should have 6 turns, 6 single turn, or if you want 4 turn and a half. That puff paste is ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turn. You mark it so you remember it. Often at the last turn here, we roll it in sugar to do like pig's ear or to do all kind of different dessert that you do. But the technique is basically the same way, whether it's sugar or flour. So, see, you can see that it's nice together. Dough is beautiful. So let me take a piece of this. You know, it's hard to see the layer here, of course, because after 6 turns, as I say, there is like 1,500 layers, but they are there. Okay, they can be rolled, as I say, in many different shapes. One of them certainly is when you take this and you brush it with eggs and a mixture of paprika and Parmesan cheese, you brush it on top to do cheese straw. Then you fold it you know, so that you can cut it. Let's say 1, 2, just to show you. So this, you will have it to do cheese straw. You can have your cheese straw that you cook in your cookie sheet, and at the end of it, when you étend them, remember now they're covered with one thing or another, you crush the end of it here and the end of it here so that they don't shrink. Another way is to do a sacristain. You take one this way, you put your hand here, your other hand here, and you do this. And that you have what we call a sacristain. And again, you cook them in a long way. You crush the end here, and you crush the end here so they don't move while they are cooking. Another shape, which is pretty common, would be to do larger sacristain like this. Again, roll in sugar. You fold it in half. You cut it in the center, and you bring that here to cook it this way. I'm sure you've seen those shapes. Sometimes you even give a double turn. There, you know, this way, and again this way, to turn it a couple more times. This. Now when you want to do pig's ear, you can take a piece like that again in sugar. Roll it into your sugar. Fold this here 1 time, at least 2 times. See where we are here. 1 time, 2 times. There is place for another time here, another one here. Fold them in half. Now you put that in the refrigerator, the log, and when it's nice and cold, of course, you cut it into those things that we call pig's ear. You put them to be cooked on the tray and you twist the end of it so they spread out, because remember that the puff paste is now in that direction, so it will spread out this way. If you want to do a tart, a square tart, which we often do, so let's say you want to do those type of cards, again you brush it with eggs, you fold it in half like this, and the type which is folded here, you cut it this way, the other one this way, then you reopen it, again brush it, you bring that part here, that would be your edge, and that other part here, which will be your other edge, to do a square puff paste tart, you know, some large one, some small one. Of course, there is the classic called fleuron, you know, that we serve as a garnish to many things, you know, certainly to fish, and that's the fleuron garnish, you know. These, of course, are rolled in sugar, all of those different shapes, and baked on either parchment paper or one of those silicone non-stick mat. And this is a few things that you can do with a puff pastry. Meringues are easy to make, inexpensive, and are used in a great variety of dessert. You can beat your eggs, of course, by hand, but here, with the help of the machine, it makes it easier. And what you do, you have 1 cup of sugar per 4 egg whites. This takes a couple of minutes to go. I put my sugar very fast in it, and I don't really beat it long after the sugar. The longer you beat it with the sugar, the more elastic your meringue will be, more like marshmallow, and you can keep it longer. However, when you cook it, it will be kind of elastic a little bit, like a marshmallow, which some people like. This one where the sugar is added very fast and just incorporated into 30-40 seconds, the meringue is going to be very brittle and very soft, which I like. So we use a pastry bag here. Those are wonderful now, those in plastic, which are not reusable. You can fold it this way. And here, putting the tip in there. It should fit right here. If you don't want it to run when it's something more liquid, twist the end of the tip and push it inside so that nothing can come out of it. You want to fold the border so you don't get it all dirty all over. And then you can fill it up, of course. Now the technique here is going to be the same than when you do, cream puff dough, for example, choux, éclair, Saint-Honoré. So it's a way of using the bag. When you have it this way, you fold it like an accordion. Then you put it there, and you will press with that part of the hand and direct with that part of the hand here. So there is all kind of shape that you can do. And then you turn it as you go along. So if you want the long one, the classic one is going to be long, you stop pushing, you stop and you bring back up. Again. On the other hand, sometimes you want like a teardrop, so you don't move the end of the bag, you apply pressure and then you pull out. More this way. Sometimes you just want to have a small meringue this way to do one thing or another. One thing that you should know is that when you use the pastry bag, here, for example, I basically touch, when I want to do a strip, a long thing like a Saint-Honoré or whatever, then you keep the pastry bag away so that you can direct the shape that you have. If I were to touch the bottom of it, then I will have problem. This is a puits d'amour, we call, a love nest, that you fill up a meringue like this. Sometimes you put another strip on top. You can do it this way to get that type of shape. And you can also then use the fluted edge here to use it this way. As well as round one. Now you want to put a bit of powdered sugar on top of it. That give it a nice glaze. And then I cook my meringue around 250 degrees. I start. And then I stop and lower it at 230 in those areas after like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It takes 2-3 hours to bake. It is. And here it is ready to go into the oven. And here is cooked meringue. As you can see, this is slightly beige in color, and I like it beige in color. I don't like it when it's totally white. Some people want it white. You have to cook it at lower temperature. You can see that this is very dry. If I break it, it breaks and very crunchy. Not marshmallow-like at all. An old classic dessert. This is how you make meringue. Something as simple sometimes as slicing a genoise in different slices can be tricky. You can use a guide like this if you want to put your knife flat on top of it and go through so that you know that the slice is equal thickness. You don't really have to. What you have to do is to start on one side, here, at the top, and you see what happens is that people tend to try turning around. You don't move your knife, you just turn the cake. See, I'm turning the cake here, so that eventually I'm back in the first slice that I started, and I'm across. Again, I will turn my cake. Again, to fall again in the same slice. And that's all there is to it. Usually you would start putting your cream. This is the top of the cake. You will put your cream in between, and that one, which is the bottom of the cake, is always flatter to finish your cake this way. I always melt my chocolate in the microwave oven. But don't put it on like 3-4 minutes, it will scorch. You put it on 1 minute, you wait for a while, put it back on another 30 seconds or so, and that's one of the best way of doing it. And one of the easiest dessert is using the leaf from the outside, on the side where you have the, the vein of the leaf. And you can brush it with chocolate, just I'm doing here. And that's it, you put them on a rolling pin or in something with a shape, like what I have here. That's it. And you put them in the refrigerator. 10 minutes later, they look like this. You can peel out the chocolate. And on the side of where you have the marble leaves there. And this is a very simple, great dessert, which the kid would love, absolutely. Here you are. Make sure that you use eatable leaf or something which is not poisonous and something which hasn't been sprayed. It's better. One of the best way to temper your chocolate so it stays shiny is to melt about 3/4 of it either on top of a double boiler or in the microwave oven. Then you put the rest of it grated on top, stir it, and that will temper the chocolate. One nice decoration here, relatively easy to do, you dip this into 2 or 3 or 4 like petals, around. And then you put that directly onto wax paper like this so it cools off in the refrigerator. And that make a nice cup that you can fill up with ice cream or with berry or with things like this. Those have been in the refrigerator for a while, to harden them out, and now let's see if those things come out. Very often they just pop out, and sometimes they give you a little bit of trouble, like those seem to. Depending on the temperature of your chocolate. Here is your chocolate cup that you can now fill up with ice cream, raspberry, strawberry, and the like. It's great with berry like this. And of course, a nice bowl of ice cream, like this, inside. Maybe a little sprig of mint. That's a beautiful dessert. In candy making, or even a pastry chef, the cooking of sugar becomes very important. Different degree, different use. Often we cook the sugar into unlined copper. Anything you put in unlined copper acidified, like you beat egg white in unlined copper. And when you don't have unlined copper, you put an acid in it. A pinch of cream of tartar, tartaric acid, or a few drops of lemon juice, citric acid, a couple of drops of vinegar, acetic acid. Any of those tend to work, but if you use the copper like this, then you don't use anything in it. It has the same reaction. So basically you start with sugar, and then we can put water in it, all water, or sometimes a little bit of water, and many chefs prepare to put a bit of Karo syrup, which is glucose, so-called, in it again to prevent crystallization. You just want to stir it enough so all the sugar is wet, and that's it. You don't want to stir it anymore. When it's cooked, you don't stir it. In fact, sometimes on the side of it there is crystallization. Sometimes we put a lid on top of it, and it gives you some vapor, some moisture, and it melts a bit of that crystallization. So now I'm going to put that to cook. Now let's see. It's still a white caramel, but I think there we are at the hard crack. Watch out with that cold water, be careful, grab some and go back in there. It hardened right on it, and you can see a little bit of tinge of yellow here. That caramel is hard. This is a hard crack. If I crack it, just explode between my teeth. This is hard crack. I have a blonde caramel here, and I want to thicken it a little more. So if you put it in water and ice, the bottom will thicken quite fast. And that's what you want. Now the bowl is oiled to prevent sticking. Try to go around. Whoop. I want to go from one side to the other. And as it cools off, it should shrink a little bit to come out of the bowl. Again, it has to cool off. Give it time. That's it. To have it in there. And now to do angel hair. A nice way of doing it like that is to do it with a whisk. You cut the end of it so you can grab it. And what I have here. So what you want to do there, you want to get a piece of wood and spread Okay, so this is the way you do angel hair, and the point is that when you have a little bit of the beeswax in it, then it doesn't glue together. You can gather it into a kind of nest like this, you know, to put it around a Saint-Honoré cake or something right on top of it, or the hat of angel hair. So whether you do it on the outside of the bowl or the inside, you want to pry it out a little bit. It does shrink a little bit as it cools off. So it should come out, and it makes a nice, you know, decoration for a swan in cream puff dough or a little cake. Birthday cake is great, and as I say, in between those you can put some flowers or herbs. Looks great. I certainly hope that you enjoy my technique and you're going to use them to cook for your friend and your family. Happy cooking!